Everyone in the United States, Canada, and around the world to another episode of It's a Wrap with Rap, the podcast of overcomers and the podcast of useful information to better our daily life and mental spirit. I am your host, Ron Rappaport. Let me start off by thanking all of our great listeners, viewers, supporters, and sponsors for helping to make this podcast such a success. The podcast is being heard on all major platforms and the podcast website, it's a wrapwithrap.com, where you can find all the episodes, previews of future episodes, and great products and services offered from our sponsors. My guest today is Maria Pendolino from Buffalo, New York. Maria is an internationally recognized award-winning voice actor. Her signature voice print has been heard across commercials, promos, documentaries, trailers, narrations, animation, video games, telephone systems, radio imaging, e-learning courses, explainer videos, and more. A performer from a young age, she caught the acting bug and auditioned for a local community production of The Sound of Music at age 11. Maria began her professional career in New York City and worked in musical theater, television, and film. Maria began working in voiceovers in 2010, booking her first spot for a local university in her hometown of Buffalo, New York. Maria also loves writing and comedy and has performed stand-up comedy and is currently working on her first adult animated comedy pilot. As a commercial voiceover talent, Maria has lent her voice to campaigns for global brands such as Comcast, Xfinity, Dannon, American Express, Hoover, Panera, and more. Maria is here today to talk about her life's work dealing with a disability she contends with, namely psoriatic arthritis, and inspire us that adversity should not come between our vision for a full, happy, and rewarding life. Welcome, Maria, to the podcast. We're so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. Can I hire you to just follow me around and read that bio before I enter
You
rooms?
like that, huh?
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's right. That's me. I did all those things.
So, Maria, at this time, I would like to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself to the audience and tell us about yourself. What did you do before voice acting, and what were your goals?
Yeah, for sure. So prior to starting voiceover in 2010, I had always been working as an actor, but prior to that, it was kind of on the sidecar of my life. So I did it in high school and college, and then when I graduated college, I took a job in banking, actually. My goal was to have enough money to pay first month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit in New York City, and maybe learn how to dance a little bit better. And then I was going to be on Broadway. That was the plan. So I got a job at a bank coming out of college, and then I would do theater and auditions on the evenings, weekends, kind of anything I could get my hands on. This would be described as off Broadway in New York.
Gotcha.
Cabaret nights, singing nights, things like that. And then the financial crisis of 2008 hit, and I found myself sitting in a corporate cubicle graveyard, waiting to either be laid off or be handed the work of all the people who had been laid off. And it was kind of like a quarter life crisis, I guess. I was approaching my late 20s, early 30s. And I just had this moment where I was like, what am I doing? How have I strayed so far from the path of what I'm passionate about, what I love doing, what I feel like I was like made to do, which is sing, perform, use my voice, and just kind of be a creative professional. Spreadsheets, finance, cubicles, it just wasn't what I saw for my life.
Sure.
So I just quit. I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll get laid off and I'll get a severance package. That would be great. That could float me for a while. It didn't happen. And in 2010, I said, it's enough. This is not how I want to spend the rest of my life. So I quit my job and I cashed in my 401k against the advice of all financial professionals online. And I used the money from the 401k that I had built up over the nearly 10 years of working in corporate America. I used it to pay for new and fresh acting classes. I got new headshots taken. I started going to evening seminars where you have the opportunity to network with casting directors and agents and managers and just kind of try to meet the people who are the gatekeepers to the work. And I got some traction pretty quickly. I was auditioning for everything that I could in New York, whether it was theater in a barn in the summer in New Hampshire for $150 a week,
Yeah.
or, Broadway shows, the TV and film things that were filming in New York at the time. So I was really running the gamut of kind of putting myself out there for every opportunity. And I had some success in booking some television roles, which was great. And I would get these confirmations like, okay, you're going to be reporting to set on this date, which is like 3 weeks away. So I know I can't book something else that's going to conflict with it, but I have like these 3 weeks. Like, what should I do? And a friend of mine was like, hey, you know what? Commercials tend to move really quickly. So, like, you might be able to weasel one in between these bookings that you know about. They tend to audition and, like, you could be recording the job the next day. So I obviously had like always thought about it. I think, a lot of people who perform and I've always enjoyed doing character parts and voices and accents. I'm sure, the idea of being a voice actor and doing things like animation and video games, like that, of course, crossed my mind, but it was like, how do you actually get there? How do you do that?
Yeah.
So I went to a seminar with a voiceover casting director who specializes in commercials. And it's kind of one of these one night only things. You pay like $79. It's an educational opportunity. Everybody gets the opportunity to read a commercial for her. She gives you some feedback, a little bit direction. You read it again, you sit down, and you get to watch everybody else kind of work in the class. So at the end of the class, I really enjoyed, watching everybody work, and I enjoyed the direction she gave to me. So I said to the casting director, I said, if I wanted to do this, if I wanted to be a voice actor, what do I need to do? Like, what classes should I take? How do I get an agent? Like, where to go from here? And she invited me to join a 4-week class that she was teaching to go, much more in depth than you can in just a one night only experience, really.
Sure.
She was teaching it with another casting director. We worked on the difference between radio commercials, TV commercials, things that are funny versus things that are really warm and heartfelt, and kind of learning the nuance of the booth and the mic and all of this stuff. And she had an agent come in at the end of the class to give everyone feedback. And I got really good feedback, and that felt great. Like, okay, I'm learning something, I'm doing something. This is something that I could really make happen for myself. So that casting director and her casting partner started calling me in directly to audition for projects they were working on, even though I didn't have an agent yet. And I got pretty close to booking like a Chase national commercial right off the bat. And when that happened, when the client had selected me as a possible option, she reached out to me and said, look, I think it's time that you had an agent. You need to be reading for other people around the city besides me. You should have the chance. And she actually took on the labor of like setting up meetings for me around New York with all the different top voiceover agencies. And that's how I got my first agent. And then it was off to the races from there. So really kind of finding a mentor and investing the time to actually like train and do it right and listen to the experience of experts and professionals. I really put my faith and trust in what she was telling me, and it paid off. I've been doing voiceover now for 14 years, and it's been my full-time job, the way that I pay my bills, my mortgage, my cat food, all of that. It's been that full-time job for me for almost 10 years now.
I mean, it's really commendable of you. You're in New York City. It's the competition has to be fierce, and you didn't give up. I mean, you just kept plugging away.
Yeah, the competition is absolutely fierce. I think it's one of the most competitive aspects of the acting industry, is voiceover. And there are a lot of people who do it really, really well. And then there's a lot of people who are trying so hard. But really, like, there are people who are just working every day and really, really masters of the craft. And it's a privilege. It's a privilege to have gotten to a place in an industry that I'm so passionate about, where I'm able to pay my bills as a working actor. And we'll get into this, I'm sure, as we talk more about my disability, but
Yeah, we
also
will.
being a working actor from home. Like, that almost seems like an oxymoron. How can you be a working actor from home? But I am. I act every day. And I'm doing it in an environment where I'm comfortable and I feel happy and safe, and I don't have to be on set for 18 hours a day or getting picked up in the van by Transpo at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
There came a time in my acting career where my disability was starting to get in the way. And the idea of doing a television show or a movie where it's just more physically demanding on your body, that started to fade away, the thought that I would be able to do that. And so it's just kind of kismet that at the same time that I was beginning to struggle with that and my disability was becoming debilitating, voiceover for me was really taking off. And, I could just walk into the studio before I had my own studio in my house. I could just walk into the studio and be like, hey guys, could I have a stool? And they're just like, yeah, sure, here's your stool,
Yeah,
versus when I was on set for TV shows and I'm like trying to hide that like maybe I'm limping that day or my leg hurts and you're just trying to like hide it and pretend like it's not happening. So it was really, it not only did it save my performing career, but it elevated it to a place that I don't think I even imagined it could be.
well, that person who gave you that idea really was a godsend, wasn't he?
Yeah, just like kicked it off. Like, hey, have you thought about commercials? And to be honest, I really hadn't thought about like the commercial business in general, mostly just because like I'm fat. Like, I don't feel like a commercial type. Like, I have a big Italian booty. Like, I'm not going to be selling like swimsuits on TV, Like, that didn't feel like me. So, like, the idea of like commercials, it just, I don't know, it just never jumped out to me. But then it was like, oh, voiceover. And it was like, yeah, everything has a voice. Not only commercials, but you obviously listed off the laundry list of genres that I work in, but you call your bank, there's a voice. We
Right.
now have all of this like talking technology in our cars. That's a voice. GPS, that's a voice. Your phone talks to you. Alexa, Siri. Those all started with voice actors. Your refrigerator talks to you and tells you that you're low on milk. Like, we're living in such a voice first world. It's unbelievable to me how much work is out there for people who have mastered the art of voice acting. And for me, every day looks different. Some days I'm selling yogurt in Pandora and Spotify ads. Some days I'm reading ladder safety to help people like do their jobs well and get home safe to their families. I'm reading medication side effects. I'm reading someone's voicemail prompts and phone on hold. It's like, I'm so sorry to keep you waiting. Your call is important to us. Like, you never think about the person who does that job. I am now the person who does that job.
Right.
And it's wild that those are the checks that I cash that I use to pay my mortgage.
I mean, it's really crazy if you think about it. I mean, do you have any idea how many people out there, and I'm sure it's got to be in the millions, have heard your voice?
Yeah, I mean, probably, I know for sure it's at least like 20, I think 27 million because I did an opening package for Monday Night Football.
Oh, wow.
It was 2 years ago. I think it was a Bears Packers game, so a good rivalry game.
Yeah.
And they do all of these like pre-game, pre-show packages that are, artistic and music and all of that. And they were looking for a female voice, which is definitely left of center for the NFL and definitely left of center for Monday Night Football. But they had this vision and it had kind of a gritty female voiceover instead of a male voiceover. And I auditioned for it, and ESPN really liked what I had to do and ended up booking it. And then I saw my voice opening up right before the gridiron music and the logo. And I think I checked the ratings like 2 days later, and it was like 24 million people had tuned into Monday Night Football, and my
Wow.
voice opened the game. And that's just wild to think about.
Yeah. I mean, that's unbelievable. What genres, Maria, did you start your voice acting in, and which genres do you work mostly now?
Yeah, so commercials was really where I got my start. And then I would say the majority of things that I do today are commercials. And then I call it kind of like industrial work. So narrations and videos for businesses. So if you're making a video about what your business offers that's like, 1 to 2 minutes long and you're putting that on your website, I do a lot of narration for that. I do corporate training courses, whether that's you at your office learning about your office's sexual harassment policy or learning about your compliance policies. I narrate a lot of things like that. I have several radio stations around the country that I'm on retainer for. They just send me their station identifications, their promos, their contests. So I voice that and then they put it on the air in the different markets. So I do a little bit of that every week. I'm the voice of WFAA, which is the NBC affiliate in Dallas, Texas. So they're sending me stuff every day for their local sponsors and community billboard events and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, every day is different, but I would say commercials and kind of corporate work is the bread and butter of it. And then when I get the opportunity to audition or perform character voices for things like animation, video games, singing demos and things like that, that's a fun way to spend the day, but it doesn't happen every day.
Now, the clientele that you have, do they go through you or you're not really connected with an agency or anything? You have built up your own clientele, is that
So it's
correct?
both. Yeah. So I have agents that represent me in all of the major media markets from Los Angeles to London.
Uh,
So I have agents that kind of take care of me in different media markets. They send me auditions that they're getting from clients that reach out to them. It could be local advertising agencies in their area, casting directors, producers, production companies, video editors, that kind of stuff. So I get on average anywhere from, I would say, 5 to 20 auditions a day. And then I can kind of pick and choose, do I like the product? Does it conflict with anything I'm currently voicing for? You know, if you're the voice of Pepsi, you can't also be the voice of Coke. So I have
yeah.
to evaluate like what I have running versus what I can go out for. Do I like the rate? Is it, fair, whatever? And do I meet the specs? Are they looking for someone who has like a really light, airy sound, which is not me? I have a nice, deep, earthy sound. So I kind of read what they're looking for and then I qualify like, am I the right person for this job? So that's part of my business. And then my agents and managers will reach out to me and say, like, hey, someone liked your audition. Are you free Tuesday from 12 to 4, whatever? So they're kind of out there doing that work for me. And then I've built up kind of my own voiceover services business where I am working directly with clients. So I'm working directly with small business owners who need someone to do their telephone system. I'm working directly with radio stations across the country who are looking for a voice. I work with learning and development managers and compliance managers who need to have custom training materials prepared for their employees. So I have a whole book of business as a small business owner, as an entrepreneur, of people that I work directly with. They come to me and just say, Maria, we're looking for a voice. Here's our budget. Here's our deadline. Are you available? And that's really, it's really wonderful to be thought of. It's great to be able to build up a business. I feel like I have almost like recurring revenue that I can count on by these people walking into my inbox. And then I meet new people. They find me through Google or they find me through social media. I also have a membership on a few peer-to-peer like marketing and gig sites where people can like listen to my demos and reach out to me. So I've put up my shingle in various places to help people find me. And then referrals. I get a lot of work from people I've done work with before, and that's, the greatest compliment. Someone can
Sure.
send you another piece of business. I also get a lot of referrals from other voice actors. People reach out and say like, hey, my client really needs a female voice. I can't do it because I have a conflict. Do you want to talk to them? And I do the same thing. I send them work saying like, hey, it's a really great client of mine, but I've got a Pepsi conflict. Do you want to talk to them? So, yeah, that's kind of how the work comes in.
And it's got to be very rewarding for you considering where you started when you were looking, putting yourself out there,
Yeah, I mean,
before anybody knew about you.
at the very beginning, I was hustling so hard. I was doing anywhere from probably 30 to 40 auditions a day, things that were paying, $50, $75 that I could find anywhere on the internet. I had a alert set up on Craigslist in case anyone had posted looking for voiceover services in the gig section of Craigslist. It was just anywhere that I could get the opportunity to be heard, to potentially get a job. I was putting myself out there. So it is really rewarding to know that all of that, those late nights and early mornings and trying to squeeze things in around my, 3 part-time jobs at the time while I was still auditioning for theater, TV, and film and all of that at the same time. All of those extra long hours to like try and make something happen have all paid off and paid dividends in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. Maria, what is your favorite genre to do and why?
Oh, that's a really good question. I really, really love doing, well, I love doing commercials, and this may be very shallow, but they pay very well. So, if you're doing a 15-second yogurt commercial, you can read a 15-second commercial a lot of times in 2 hours. and it can pay very well if it's going to be a national commercial. It's on a specific contract where you get paid per airing. It can be very lucrative. But those commercials are also very, very competitive. So you're not likely to book, a ton of those.
Yeah.
So I love commercials for that reason. They're also fun. Advertising is fun. People working in the creative services are a lot of fun. But I really love documentaries. I was definitely a fan of like the True Hollywood Story
Oh,
and
yeah.
VH1's Behind the Music. Like I love learning kind of the backside of Hollywood and the stories of people coming up and stuff. So I've worked with a couple of companies that do really fun pop culture documentaries. I've done some history documentaries. I just narrated one about the eruption of Mount Vesuvius and the lost city of Pompeii. So just little stuff like that. I love being able to tell historical stories or fun kind of bubblegum pop culture stories in documentaries.
Okay. Now tell us about your career in movies and television and your career in stand-up comedy. I mean, you're running the gamut, so tell, tell, tell us about that. I'm very interested. I'm sure the
Yeah,
audience
sure.
is.
The stand up is easy. I have not, because of my disability and being immunocompromised, I really have not pursued doing stand up for the last couple of years. I've been writing a lot. I have a lot of material ready for when I'm ready to get back out there. But I've done some comedy at our Helium Comedy Club here in Buffalo. And I've got a couple of clips online from my set. But yeah, so I started out doing TV, film, and theater. I had the opportunity to work on Lifetime's drama show Army Wives. It filmed in Charleston. It was on for 7 or 8 seasons. So I played a recurring character, a very kind of bitchy army wife, in several episodes, which was a lot of fun. I also got to film an episode of Locked Up Abroad, which is a drama documentary on National Geographic.
I
And
love
the
that show,
series
by the way. I love that
it's
show.
it's a bingeable show, but yeah, for those who are not familiar, it's about people who are trying to smuggle drugs or do other illegal activities in foreign countries, and they end up getting caught.
Yeah.
And I got to be a reenactment actor. I did not try to smuggle anything out of a country, but they were telling the story of a woman who was from New York City and had gone to Colombia and was hoping to smuggle drugs out of Colombia to make a quick buck. Spoiler alert, that didn't work. And it was a lot of fun. I got to film on location in Colombia. We filmed in Bogota and Barranquilla. I got to eat some delicious Colombian food, and I was like the star of the reenactment show. So the crew was always taking really good care of me. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I was
Yeah, I
in
bet.
Colombia for 3 weeks filming. So that was quite an experience. My dad says that he still, to this day, cannot watch it because he's just so scared of seeing like the shots of me in the Colombian prison. And I was like, yeah, it was okay. You can't see what's on the other side, which is like the camera guy and everyone else like goofing off while I'm like supposedly sitting there crying in prison. So I remember what it was like filming, so I felt okay about it. And yeah, the other really fun experience I had was I did a Bollywood movie. There was a Bollywood movie called English Vinglish, which filmed part on location in New York and part on location in India. And it starred an Indian star named Siri Devi, who unfortunately has passed away, but she was like the Julia Roberts of Bollywood in the 90s. And then she took off time from her career to raise her family. And this movie was actually her comeback vehicle. It was the first movie that she had made in a really long time. It was directed by a female director, which is really not popular in the Bollywood industry. So it was record breaking in many ways. And it actually premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival that year as a very kind of red carpet premiere, which was really cool. So yeah, I had the opportunity to act with a Bollywood star. That was a really, really, really cool experience and best craft services on any movie I've ever worked on. The freshest, most delicious Indian food I've ever had.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of going to India. And did you film this in Mumbai by chance?
No, I got to film in New York, so I did not get the trip to India.
Oh, you didn't. All right. Well, yeah, it's a very interesting country for sure. And Colombia, I'd love to go to. I'm sure that it's a beautiful country.
Absolutely beautiful. Had a great time.
Yeah. Now, You know that this podcast features people overcoming adversity, and you are an advocate for the disabled, and you suffer from psoriatic arthritis, and I believe you developed it at age 22. And let me take a moment out of the podcast to tell you about our guest and supporter of the podcast, Dr. Laura Gabayan's new book, Common Wisdom: 8 Scientific Elements of a Meaningful Life. I have read this book and must admit that to have the knowledge that this book exists and not read it would be a loss. Dr. Laura, who is a world-renowned physician and researcher, interviewed 60 wise adults across North America and defined wisdom as 8 elements. These 8 elements are the secret ingredients to living a life of joy and success. This is one of those books that you think, has this ever been written before? The book is very reader-friendly, bite-sized, to the point, easily digestible, yet profound and relatable. Along the way, the book reserves a place for the reader to write their reaction to each concept so they can revisit it later. While rooted in scientific research, this book is beautifully written in a way that makes the profound insights accessible and relatable to everyone. It's not just a study, it's a secret formula for achieving happiness and success. Hopefully, parents would encourage their children to read this book to enrich their lives going forward. I encourage you to give yourself and your friends and family the gift of learning and move towards the light of wisdom. You will not be disappointed purchasing this book. This book can transform your life. The book is available from Amazon in hardcover, paperback, audiobook, and Kindle formats. Information about the book will be listed in the podcast notes. Started getting aggressive after that. Could you please explain to our audience what psoriatic arthritis is and how it impacted your life and your career?
Sure. So, psoriatic arthritis is an autoimmune condition. And what happens is your own immune system begins attacking your joints. So, the same way that your immune system is looking for intruders like viruses or bacteria, it gets confused and it starts eating your healthy joint tissue. So, your joint tissue around your knees, your elbows, your neck, your back, your ankles, wherever you've got a joint, your immune system is mistakenly attacking that, creating inflammation and causing damage. And what results from this autoimmune condition and that damage is then what we know as osteoarthritis, which, that's the arthritis that you think of when you're watching Jeopardy and you see the Tylenol commercials and the Aspercream commercials, and it's old people rubbing their hands and all of that kind of stuff. So what happens is you end up with that osteoarthritis much sooner as a result of the autoimmune joint damage and inflammation. It is one of those things that is not really well understood. There is no cure. It lives alongside other autoimmune conditions that cause inflammation, similar to rheumatoid arthritis, even people who suffer from IBS, Crohn's disease, those types of things that cause inflammation and then have a knock-on effect. There's a lot of classes of conditions that kind of behave in a similar way, but ultimately the outcome is different. So what happened for me was I had moved to New York City right after college, and I was walking around this big pedestrian wonderland for the first time. And I started to experience really significant knee pain and swelling, especially on the left side of my leg. I had it almost looked like a fluid-filled lump that was kind of like sitting above my knee. My roommate nicknamed my knee Lumpy the left knee at that time. And at first I thought, gosh, I'm doing all of this walking. I have got to get better shoes. These Old Navy flip-flops are just not going to cut it.
Right.
So I went and had custom orthotics made. And I said, here we go. I've got good foot support. Now I look like all of those professional women walking through Midtown with my white sneakers and my black skirt, and I've got it all going on. And it didn't get better. And I was still in pain and it was really hurting me. And I just could not figure out what was going on. I ended up seeing a doctor and having like a very small arthroscopic procedure that was totally unnecessary and did not address any of my concerns. I went to physical therapy because they thought my kneecaps were sitting too high. So they were trying to like tape my kneecaps back in place. So I went through this like period of 2 years where I'm just trying to figure out what is going on. And I finally just got fed up with it. I got the issue of New York Magazine where they rank the doctors in the city.
Yeah.
And I found the orthopedic section. And I went to the number one orthopedist in New York City on Fifth Avenue, who does not take insurance. And I paid $500 out of pocket for just a consultation. And I went in there and I said, here's what's been happening. Here's what I've had done. It's not getting better. I can't figure it out. Please, can you just help me? I'm too young to feel this hurt. And he looked at my x-rays and kind of did an examination. And to his credit, he was very, very kind and not at all attitudinal like his Fifth Avenue office would indicate.
Right.
And he said, I really don't think you have an orthopedic problem. I think you have a blood problem. I'd like you to see this rheumatologist at NYU. And he sent me down to the NYU Hospital for Joint Diseases, and I saw a rheumatologist who I explained all of my symptoms to. And then as we were wrapping up, he said, is there anything else you can think of? Anything else, even if it seems completely unrelated? Is there anything else in your medical history we haven't talked about? And I said, well, I have psoriasis, and I've had it since I was a kid. It's pretty mild. It shows up on my knees and my elbows and my scalp. I'm very fortunate I don't get like, big red blistering plaques in the middle of my face or my arms, but it's there.
Yeah.
And he whips around in his chair and he pulls a pamphlet out of the hanger behind his desk and he hands me this packet and it says psoriatic arthritis. Psoriatic spelled the same way that psoriasis is, PSOR, etc. And I read all about it, and psoriatic arthritis tends to hit women in their 20s and 30s. So I was like kind of right smack in the diagnosis window. And it very frequently presents alongside psoriasis. So a lot of people who have psoriasis develop psoriatic arthritis later. A lot of people who develop psoriatic arthritis have psoriasis in their past. So that started kind of a chain reaction of trying to deal with things. And the goal really for anyone who's diagnosed with an autoimmune condition like psoriatic arthritis, the goal is to either reduce or stop the inflammation to stop the resulting end damage from happening. So the quicker that you can turn off your immune system's misfiring and get it to stop attacking the joints, the better off you will be. And this is what we kind of think of when people are talking about autoimmune diseases being in remission. In remission meaning you've lowered your inflammation levels to a point where they are no longer doing tons of active damage to whatever it is they attack. So I started taking a drug called Humira, which is still, marketed and advertised for psoriatic arthritis and other autoimmune conditions. And it was working for me for a while and keeping the inflammation at bay. But unfortunately, I experienced side effects and I had to stop taking the medication. And then that started about an 8-year span where I was not able to do anything to stop the active inflammation. So I was able to take things like Advil or Aleve or use creams like Voltaren to reduce the pain that I was experiencing to mitigate symptoms.
Yeah.
But I was not able to do anything systemically to stop the inflammation from continuing to eat away at my joints. So I got to the point where I was in New York, and this was about the end of 2012 going into 2013. And I just was not able to move or exist the way that I used to. So my apartment was about an 8 street block walk from the subway, which is about, in New Yorker terms, about a 7 to 10 minute walk, which is very manageable. And I could no longer get off the subway and walk to my apartment. So I would get off the subway and then I'd have to wait for the bus to take me the 8 blocks to get to my apartment. I lived in a 3rd floor walk up, and it got to the point where I couldn't do the steps 1 foot at a time. So I had to do each step 2 feet, each step 2 feet. And just like little things like that started to fall off, where I just recognized I was losing mobility. I was losing range of motion. Your legs should be able to, fully extend to a flat 180, and then you want to be able to bend it back and back beyond 90 degrees. I couldn't fully extend or bend my legs anymore. I was losing range of motion in my arms and my elbows. And I was just in pain. I was in awful, awful, awful pain. And New York was just no longer a place that I could really live. There's so much standing, waiting, stairs, and New York City is not a kind city to disabled people. It is well behind the eight ball as it pertains to accessibility. And the accessibility items that have been installed are frequently out of order. So New York City needs to do a lot of work to be kinder and more accessible to all sorts of disabled people who need to use things like public transportation and access services. So I was just finding myself trapped. And I made the decision in 2014 to leave New York at the height of the career that I was building. And I moved back to Buffalo, where I have family. And ultimately, I thought probably a knee surgery was in my future. And I knew that I would need to have it done in a place where I would have a support system to help me and not a third floor walk up apartment to try and get in and out of.
Right.
I moved back to Buffalo and I just started trying to find doctors. And it actually took meetings with 8 different orthopedic surgeons to find someone who would do a knee surgery on me. What I really needed was a total knee replacement, and I needed it on both knees. And the majority of folks that I met with would not do the surgery on someone my age. At that time, I was 32. And I said, look, I totally get the fact that most of the people that you do knee replacements on are in their 50s and 60s. However, I am a young, vibrant person who wishes to have the ability to walk for the next 20 years. And if the joints don't last the duration of my lifetime, I will either have the surgery again and replace them again, or I will just succumb to a wheelchair or a scooter full time and no longer be an ambulatory person. But I would like to try to use my legs right now, and I would like to try and reduce this pain profile that I have. I did find a surgeon who was willing to take that journey with me. He was fantastic. He was a great collaborator with the rheumatologist that I started working with in Buffalo. So my rheumatologist and I were actively working to address the root cause of the inflammation to prevent further damage. And then the surgeon and I worked together to plan how to replace my knees in a way that allowed me to rehab them, get back up on my feet, and ultimately get to a point where I could improve not only my pain, but also my mobility and flexibility. So I'm here now, 10 years later from that time. It's not perfect. It's better than it has been. The pandemic was very difficult for me, as someone who has an autoimmune condition. I also have about 3 or 4 other things that were constantly listed as COVID's pre-existing conditions where I was much more likely to die or much more likely to suffer severe disease because of these pre-existing conditions. So my husband and I stayed at home, nearly housebound, for almost 3 full years. Anything that I was leaving my house for, I was staying in the car. So I was getting all of my groceries via delivery or curbside pickup.
It can be very difficult to get a face-to-face therapy appointment these days for those who need it. It can be expensive, difficult to squeeze a visit in your hectic schedule, not to mention how lonely and unsupported you can feel in between sessions and how you just seem to forget all the things your therapist told you since your last visit. No more. Therapy on your terms is now available through onlinetherapy.com. Your personal therapist will be by your side from start to finish, guiding you to a happier you through the sections, worksheets, unlimited messaging, and live sessions available as video, voice only, or text chat. You can do this from wherever you are in the world. Each section includes all the information and hands-on tools that you need to identify, challenge, and overcome your problems. In each worksheet, you will answer questions and get valuable hands-on tools and tips from your therapist on a daily basis. Each week, you will have access to a 45-minute live therapy session with your therapist via video, voice only, or text providing a perfect opportunity to receive instant guidance and support. You can always send your therapist a message with any questions or thoughts. To start, choose your area of concern, including but not limited to anxiety, depression, OCD, PTSD, stress, anger management, couples therapy, family issues, panic attack, ADHD, chronic pain, eating disorders, abuse, and trauma, and get matched with your therapist. Choose the subscription plan that best suits your needs, starting at just $40 a week. OnlineTherapy.com has received an average rating of 4.8 out of 5 stars. Please click the link in the podcast notes or below this video ad for detailed information and to order, and start your therapy journey today to become a happier you.
Or same thing, restaurants and takeout, curbside pickup or delivery. If I was going anywhere, it was to a doctor's appointment or to get blood drawn. I declined all invitations for family parties, holidays, events, weddings, you name it, didn't go to any of them. I went to like a family picnic. I sat outside in a chair by myself and we set up like a circle of orange cones around me so that literally no one could approach. And we took drastic measures to protect my health, my safety, and literally my life.
Yeah.
So I am proud to say here I am in 2024, and I've never had COVID, knock on wood. My husband has also never had COVID. I worked really hard to be able to say that. But what it cost me was a lot of the flexibility and mobility that I had built up because I was staying at home. And I think you don't even realize how much just sporadic cardio and activity that you get from walking from your house to the car, walking from your car to Target, walking from Target to your car, parking your car 2 blocks away from a restaurant, and then walking to the restaurant. All of these little things
Sure.
that I totally took for granted as part of my kind of daily life were totally taken away. And I lost quite a lot of ability as it pertained to my range of motion, especially on the left-hand side of my body, which has been the weaker, worse off joint from the beginning, and the cardiovascular capacity of movement. So coming out of the most severe quarantine and lockdown periods of the pandemic, I have been going back to physical therapy to try and improve my range of motion. I've gained about 35 degrees of flexibility, flexion, and extension since I started going again in February. Basically, I go to physical therapy and a small Canadian woman just like puts her entire body weight on my leg trying to extend it and flex it. I call it it's the good pain because it hurts like hell when I'm there, but it's for a good cause, for a good
Right,
reason.
right.
And that's where I'm at today. So I identify as disabled. I use combination of mobility devices depending on the day. So that might look like me using a cane and walking short distances. That might look like me using a mobility scooter. Big fan of the Pride Victory. I have it in royal blue. It might look like me using a wheelchair. I have a manual wheelchair that my husband can push if that's the more appropriate device for the setting. So I am a ambulatory disabled person in that I can walk, I can stand, but depending on the length or duration that I'll need to be standing, the distance that I need to traverse, the weather, if it's humid, there's a
Right.
number of factors that kind of go into how I make the decision of how I'm going to get from point A to point B on any given day. But that's where I live today, and I'm fortunate that I can control my environment for where I'm working. So when I'm recording my voiceover work in my voiceover booth, I sit on a padded piano bench and I kind of just sit and I can just bring things to life from a seated position where I'm most comfortable.
Well,
But that's
I
that's the
can,
psoriatic arthritis saga in all its glory.
yeah, and I can relate to you. I don't know if you can see, but I developed lymphedema from my cancer surgery, my second cancer surgery. and I know what it's like, to be not, I wasn't disabled to the extent you were, but nonetheless, it's not fun,
Yeah,
and
you come out differently, right? You're
yeah,
now experiencing something different than you're used to.
right, right. And I just wanted to ask you, because we're going to be talking more about disability, because I know you're a big disability advocate. Did you face any outward negativity from your employers or your fellow workers over your disability of psoriatic arthritis? I
I think
did it.
it's just I I had one instance where when I was still in New York, still auditioning, I was going in to audition for an off-Broadway play, and I was going in to read a part for a casting director who I had auditioned for several times. I was very excited about the opportunity. And when I walked in, the first thing she said to me was like, "Oh, are you limping?" And it just took the wind out of my sails. You
Right.
know, it just I thought I was doing a better job of walking that day. I thought I was taking care of myself. I thought I was doing a better job of hiding it, right? So that might be classified as one of my like many come to Jesus moments when you realize that like this isn't something you can hide. This isn't something you can just deal with, but it's actually like it's worse than you thought it was. Um and she wasn't trying to be, nasty or mean or whatever. It was kind of just said as like a casual like, "Oh, I didn't notice this," right? But I think for me, the most negativity that I've personally experienced, and I'm fortunate that it hasn't happened to me a lot, but it's just the outward comments of people finding it or feeling it necessary to share what they're feeling about what they're seeing, right? And
Right.
they don't know you and they don't know your story. So, like, there was a time that I was walking into Target and I had just like parked my car and I was just walking the way that I walk. And this woman walked up to me and she's like, "Oh my God, what happened?" And like, nothing happened. Like, what do you want me to tell you, Sheila? It's not, I didn't get hit by a bus. Like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna stand here and give you like an 8-year rundown of autoimmune conditions and why today I'm limping. Like, it's just so strange when people feel so entitled to like your health information or just like why they need to say something. Like
Yeah.
people walk different. Like why do you need to say anything? Like I'm having a great day. I don't really need you to like mirror this back to me that you think that like something tragic and terrible has happened because my left leg is dragging behind the right one, you know? I had this really weird incident happen. I was visiting a friend of mine in Dallas and I was taking like the airport bus shuttle from the rental car area, and got on the bus, had my suitcase, whatever. I got off the bus, and a man walked up to me, and he like put his hands on me, which is like already like no, thank you. And then he started like praying on me, like, "Oh, I hope that God can heal you and will make you better, and you won't." All of this kind of stuff, and I was like, "Bud, like, hey, I'm just like here living. Like, this is not. I don't need that." And
Right.
like at its root, I appreciate that you want to send like good vibes into the universe for me, but like I don't need first of all you to touch my body, and
Right.
also I don't need you to like start listing the things that you're asking God to fix on me, like on my behalf. Like I am not something to be fixed. Actually, what you're seeing is the fixed state. So imagine how awful I feel now that you tell me that like you think I'm like a charity case. Like,
Yeah.
this is better. I am now better. I have had the surgery. I am walking better than I have. I am feeling better than I have. I am not in pain currently. And you are projecting onto me an image of someone who is feeble and sad and in need of prayer. And I don't mean to disparage people who believe in the power of prayer and religion. It's not about that. It's about consent. It's
No,
about the fact that he
I,
did not ask for consent to both touch me, pray on me, and then project all of these things
well,
onto
I
me.
understand completely. I mean, when I had my lymph nodes taken out and the lymphedema was very, very exaggerated from what it is now. I mean, my arm was out to here. I had wraps around it. I would go to Lowe's and people would just stop me. What's wrong with you? What happened to you? Were you in a fight? And all this stuff. And why are you bothering me? I'm just in the store doing my business. Leave me alone, And so I can definitely, relate to you. And for the people out there, if you see somebody in a wheelchair, I mean, why would you go up to them and ask them what happened to you? I
I
mean,
know.
why would you do that?
So strange.
But being a stand-up comedian, has humor helped you through your disability?
It definitely has. I think you have to see the funny things in what you go through because it's just a lot, it's a lot to deal with. It's a lot of doctor's appointments, it's a lot of bureaucracy, it's a lot of follow-ups, and sometimes it's, two step forwards, three steps back, one step forward, one step back, it's just a lot of push and pull. And I think you just have to have a sense of humor just to get through the day,
Yeah.
Is everything funny? No, there are times that I feel sad. There are times that I cry. There are times that I have those, why me like moments where I'm looking to the heavens. I don't know. I need like a Keanu Reeves like movie where he's like looking up in the black darkness and the rain's coming down. I think you've got those moments. You've got the dark night of the soul moments. But I just there are some things where it's like, look, this just happened to be the cards that I've been dealt. There's no way to put the cards back in the deck. So you got to play them or you got to fold. And folding was never an option for
No,
me.
we're not going down that rat hole.
No, no, I'm not going to fold. I'm going to play. And
Yeah,
some days it's going to be better than others.
right.
And some days I have more quippy retorts for what's going on with me than other days. But yeah, I think and I'm grateful to my friends and family for giving me the space to like laugh about it and make jokes when I need to make jokes about it. And I think they've discovered what is game and what is not game
Yeah,
for, a little gentle ribbing.
yeah,
I'm with my siblings and my cousins. I come from a big, loud Italian family, and if I couldn't let them give me the business a little bit, it just wouldn't be life, right? So
yeah, really. Would you please tell us a story of resilience that highlighted your ability to find joy and laughter amidst your adversity?
that's a really great question. Uh, yeah, I think this it starts with a story that maybe isn't, and then it gets better. But I had a I had a moment where I had 3 months between when I had stopped working in banking and kind of started up my acting career in earnest. And one of the things I did during those 3 months was I went to England and Wales for a friend's wedding. And I I had one of those experiences at an airport where you find out like you make it through security and then you find out what gate you're at. And I was at the probably the furthest gate you could possibly be at from where security is at Heathrow Airport, which is an enormous airport. It is basically like an airport plus two shopping malls
Yeah, I've been
all
there. It's
piled on
it's
top of
it's
each
not
other.
good. Yeah.
It's not good. And I just realized that I was going to die to get from one end to the other. Um, but I walked it. This was before my knee surgery. So I walked it, I did it, I got to the gate, I made it, and I was like, I can never do that again. I'm never gonna make it.
Yeah.
So from that point forward, I started requesting wheelchair assistance to help me get from point A to point B, which has been really, really helpful. And I really, as a person who is um, moderately successful in my work, I really try to take care of service people around me. And one time I had a kind of young 20 something guy who was my wheelchair attendant, kind of pushing me from gate one to the other. And he was really funny. He was asking me how my day was going. He was asking me where I was traveling to. And he was just really chatty. You could tell, like, he's a people person. He's in the service industry. Like, he's whatever career path he's on. This is a great job for him. So we get to the gate and I thanked him for his help and assistance. And I gave him a $20 tip. And you could just tell by the look on his face that he is not accustomed to being handed a $20 bill for helping someone get from point A to point B in whatever airport I was in. But he told me that I had just given him enough money to buy the like video game system that he was saving up for. And it was just this moment of like, I don't know. I was so resistant to asking for help. I think a lot of people who deal with adversity and disability have these moments in their life where they're like, I can do it. Like, I don't need help. I don't need to ask for it. And then you struggle. And then sometimes you put yourself in really like uncomfortable situations. Like I struggled through Heathrow Airport and was in a lot of pain. And the flight back from London to New York was awful because I had basically walked the equivalent of a broken person's marathon trying
Sure.
to get to that gate. So for me, it was this moment where I was like, I've made this decision where I'm going to ask for help. I appreciate the help. The help is necessary. And like, I, took advantage of the help. I got to connect with this really lovely young man. And then like, he made my life easier getting me to that gate. And then I made his dreams come true by giving him a tip. So it's just kind of like a perfect little human experience.
Yeah, that's a great story. Do you find that non-disabled people have a binary view of disability? For example, you're either 100% disabled or you're perfectly fine. I'll give you an example. You see people all the time, they're in disabled parking, and then they get out of their car, and people go, well, why are they in disabled parking? They're walking. Well, you don't know
Yes.
what's going on. And
Yes.
I mean, you find that?
Absolutely. I think people have a very binary, very black and white view of disability. If they see someone in a wheelchair or using a wheeled mobility device, they assume that you are paralyzed.
Yeah,
And when you move a leg or you stand up, suddenly you are faking it and you're taking advantage of the system.
exactly.
And there are 1,000 reasons why someone might want to use a mobility device that range from, fully paralyzed to having a bad day. And what's really interesting to me about the fact that people struggle with this is that we see people use devices temporarily and we don't give them guff for it. You sprain your ankle, you might need to use crutches for 6 weeks. You had foot surgery, you're going to get yourself a little knee scooter. Use the knee scooter for 6 weeks. So we have all of these examples where people understand the concept of disability being a spectrum, right? Disability is the largest minority that you may come in and out of throughout your life. You can become disabled, you can recover, you could be permanently disabled, you could get more disabled and then less disabled. Like it truly like is a fluid spectrum of experience, and no two disabled people, even if they have the same condition, their experience is not the same. You still have to take into account that person's body, that person's circumstances, where that person lives, that person's family. There are 1,000 different permutations of what colors and changes a person's particular experience with their disability, with their body. And yes, I have had I was parking in the disabled parking space, which I have a placard for. And I feel like a lot of people don't know this. If you have like a over the mirror placard, you are supposed to take the placard down while you are driving because it blocks your vision.
Sure.
So I got into my car, I took the placard from the mirror and put it in the center console, and then an elderly woman pulled into the handicap spot directly across from me. And when she locked eyes with me, young person, parked in the spot, and my placard had already been put away, she grabbed her placard and waved it out the window at me. Like, you're in the wrong spot. You don't belong here. You are taking up space. So what did I do? I got it out of my center console and I waved it back at her. Here it is. Here's what you were looking for. And it's just like, You see people share things on social media all the time. And I really like three cheers to the other disabled advocates who have chosen to like publicly talk about these stories with people like accusing disabled people of faking it, telling them that they're not entitled to those spaces, or you're not as disabled as other people, so you should move like it's a contest. I just do not understand why people feel so unbelievably empowered to just be awful to disabled people, awful to their face. What happened to the golden rule? Treat people the way you want to be treated. And if you don't have something nice to say, shut up.
Yeah,
Honestly.
really, really.
But yeah, I would say a lot of people just really cannot, especially as it pertains to like wheeled mobility devices. People cannot wrap their head around the fact that it is possible to walk and use your legs and also need a mobility device.
Well, what, in your opinion, can be done to be a voice for the middle ground, to educate people about the different situations of people living with a disability?
We need more visibility of disabled people in the world, period. More visibility. There's a great organization called the 1 in 4 Coalition, which is specifically advocating for more representation of disabled folks in Hollywood, both in front of the camera and behind the camera as directors, writers, choreographers, all of that kind of stuff. We need to see more people. We need to see disabled people using a wheelchair and then getting up and standing. We need to see people using canes. We need to see young people, old people, middle-aged people. We need to see different representations of true lived disability in our media consumption. We need to see more disabled people in the workplace. Disabled people are hired and maintain employment at far fewer rates than their non-disabled peers. We need to see more disabled people being given accommodations so they can do jobs that they've been trained to do or do jobs that they are capable of doing. I want to see more disabled people in children's media and storybooks. I just want to see more disabled people everywhere because we are out there. 25% of Americans have at least one disability, whether that is an invisible disability or a visible disability. We represent an enormous portion of the population, 25%.
That's a lot.
Yet we are so poorly represented across the board as it pertains to presence in media, elected officials, you name it. So I think the cure for everything that you're talking about is just disabled people being in more places, period.
In your opinion, in the United States and Canada and other countries, are they doing enough to provide resources like ramps and parking spots, that kind of
No,
thing?
it's abhorrent. And the laws that come around with the Americans with Disabilities Act are not proactively enforced. The onus is on disabled people to make reports and file lawsuits. There isn't someone actively making sure that things are happening. If there was, New York City would not be so far behind when it comes to making public transportation accessible. They've come out and said that the entire system won't be like fully like accessible until like 2060 something. And it's like, that's not acceptable.
No.
It's not acceptable. I don't know what the actual year is, but they came out with a report and it was like at the current funding level, at the current investment level, it's still like 20 or 30 years away before every station would
Yeah,
be
it's on the
accessible.
bottom of the totem pole in
Absolutely.
priorities.
Absolutely. Yeah. So no, there's definitely not enough being done. And I think also, it gets to it's like this chicken and the egg scenario, right? You've got, little small businesses and restaurants and whatever, and they're in historical buildings or things have been grandfathered in. And it's like, well, we don't have any disabled customers, so why would I invest in a lift or a ramp or whatever? It's a chicken and an egg scenario. You don't have any disabled customers because you don't provide any accessibility. How are they going to
Exactly.
patronize your business?
Yeah.
Um, but honestly, like I really feel strongly that it shouldn't necessarily be any one individual business's responsibility. This should be social investment. This should be happening at the government level. It should be happening at the local level, at the bureaucratic level. Money needs to be allocated to retrofit old buildings, to make sure that you've got curb cuts that are not at a, 70-degree angle that people can actually get wheelchairs up and down without assistance. You've seen people again on social media. Somebody shared a video where they walked up to a building at a college and they pushed the like automatic opener button, and it opens the doors for a wheelchair user, and it opens the doors to stairs. And it's
Yeah.
just like, has anyone, did anyone think about this? Right? I saw
Right.
one video, which I thought was amazing. A professor of architecture makes all of the students move around campus in a wheelchair for the day and makes them try to do all of the things that they normally do. And they suddenly have this experience and they realize what life is like for a disabled classmate, how
Yeah.
far around in circles they have to walk to get to doors that are actually accessible, how many times they approach accessible door openers to find that they don't work or doors are locked, how many times they approach an elevator to find that the elevator is out of order or unusable, just has a sign on it with no indication of anything else to do. And it's things like that, having that experience. And until you see that experience happen, until you experience it for yourself, until you have a friend or a loved one that has to navigate the lack of accessibility in this country, you don't even know that it's happening. And then you hear like, well, it just doesn't seem like there's that many people who would use it. Yeah, because they stayed home. They stayed home because they didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
When I think about how much emotional labor I have to take on just to go to a concert. Like, am I going to be able to get in the venue? Is there somewhere that I'm going to be able to park my mobility device so I can see? Will I be able to transfer from my mobility device to a chair? Does the venue even have chairs? Does the venue have stools? Like all of these different things. And some venues are great and they have it on their website or they have an accessibility coordinator that you can call and ask. And sometimes you call and you say, "Hi, I'd like to come to a concert. I'm a wheelchair user," and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's 10 stairs to get into the thing, so we don't have." And it's like, "So you don't have an elevator or a lift?" "No." And it's like, "Okay, that's not legal." So then am I going to take on the labor of like filing an ADA like complaint or lawsuit? I don't have the time. So it's just
Yeah.
these like little moments that happen all the time and you don't realize how much work and thought and emotional labor that disabled people are putting into just trying to do the same things as everyone else with so little assistance from the outside world.
Maria, being a person of disability, what would you like to tell our audience about? We kind of alluded to this, what not to say to a disabled person that they may meet or see out in public that would make them upset, and what gestures would you appreciate hearing or receiving from people out and about that would lift you up?
Yeah, don't ask strangers for a rundown on their medical history. Don't ask them what's wrong with them. Don't ask what happened. Just keep those questions to yourself. I'm happy for people to just say hi. Tell me that you like my shirt or you like my purse, or tell me that, when I'm, looking at a cute cat or something, like just have a conversation with me the same way you would with someone who's standing next to you. Just a simple smile and like an acknowledgement of like, "Hey, I see you living your life. Great job." Just a small acknowledgement like that, I think, goes a long way. But yeah, don't ask for invasive information. You wouldn't want someone to come up to you and ask you what happened at your last doctor's appointment when you're standing in the Target parking lot. Don't do it to someone else.
Now, for those out there having a difficult time dealing with perhaps a disability or any other adversity, what words of advice do you have for them to help their situation?
I would say empower your friends and family to support you in whatever way you need. Tell them what you need. Um, your friends and family want to support you, but they're not mind readers. So the more explicit you can be in what it is you need, whether that is assistance meal prepping for the week, or you need someone to give you a ride somewhere, or you've challenged yourself to do exercises and you'd love a friend or family member to check in to see if you did it for accountability. Just let your friends and family know what you need. And then the other thing I would say is don't just stay home because it's easier. Challenge yourself to get out there and do things. There are things that are available and accessible. And there's a lot of great resources online where people have shared specific things that are easy to do with a disability. There are disability related travel companies. So the internet is your friend. There is stuff out there. People who have come before you have documented and left the breadcrumbs. So take advantage of that. I would also say just don't give up. There are days where it's going to be harder than other days. There are days that it's going to be easier than other days. You need to show up on both of those days. And then also just be kind and true to yourself. If you are having not a good day as it pertains to your disability, reschedule. And I would say lay the groundwork, especially people who are dealing with chronic illnesses and things like that, that really do fluctuate from day to day. I've laid enough groundwork with my friends and family that they know I'm not a flake. But there are days where we have something scheduled and I just cannot make it happen because of what is going on with my body. Be honest with your friends and family and let them know what you're dealing with and say, I want you to know I never want to cancel on you. The last thing I want to do is cancel on you. But sometimes it's important for me to put up a boundary and say the best thing for me today is to stay in my bed with my ice packs. And I'm sorry that I can't go to the concert that we bought the tickets for, but like this is just what I need today. So I would say have those conversations with your friends and family about what they can expect from you as a friend and family member, and then just ask for the grace and space if you need it. I've never been upset that I asked for time and space, but I've often been upset that I didn't ask for what I need and pushed myself too far.
That's great advice, Maria. Maria, if people want to contact you, what would be the easiest way?
Sure. So my voiceover website is voicebymaria.com. You can email me or message me through my site. I'm also on social media, mostly Instagram and TikTok at Maria Pendo, Pendo. And I'm also happy to connect with people professionally on LinkedIn. You can find me there. But yeah, that's the best way to reach me.
What was that Instagram again? At
Sure.
Maria?
Maria Pendo, Maria Pendo.
Gotcha. Okay. I would like to thank you, Maria, for being on the podcast and shining a spotlight on this important subject. And I wish you all the good fortune and good health going forward in your life and your career. And hopefully
Thank you
we can
very
have you
much, Rowan. It
back.
has been a pleasure being with you today.
It's a pleasure having you here and just people listening to this around the world, getting an insight into disabilities and getting to know you, which I'm sure many have heard your voice. So you're not a stranger.
Nope, probably not.
Well, thank you again. And comments and suggestions for the podcast, you can email me at it's a wrap with rap at gmail.com. Our Instagram is it's a wrap with rap podcast. We're on X at rapper, WRAPPER 130. Our Facebook group is It's a Wrap with Rap. We have about 2,000 members in there. All the episodes are on YouTube. On our YouTube channel, It's a Wrap with Rap, the podcast uncut. And our website is it's a wrap with rap.com. All the episodes are on there too. I want to thank everyone for listening. Please stay safe. And for now, it's a wrap.